Welcome to Glass in Session. I'm your host, Val. Thank you for joining me. When you think of wines of Argentina, do you think of sparkling wines? I sure didn't. I thought of Malbec. That is, until I was sitting in a happy hour at a hotel reading about sparkling wines in preparation for that particular unit of the WSET diploma. First up in my study materials, in alphabetical order, Argentina. This blew my mind and made that big of an impression as I ordered a glass of espumante, because that's what they call it down there, and I read on. The fact that the hotel bar actually had one on their menu blew whatever was left of my overfried brain at that point as well. I'll not even try to defend the fact that, yes, my brain was fried. I thought it was a good idea to sit 2 WSET diploma exams at the same time. I think one of them was sparkling, the other one might have been fortified, and it was my 4th attempt at the Certified Wine Educator Varietal ID exam, which I kept missing by 1 glass, and my Champagne Master Level exam, having only completed the French Wine Scholar 6 months earlier. So yes, cork dork indeed, studying for 4 to 5 exams at the same time because they all seemed to go together was my idea of a good time. And it could explain a lot. Back to why my mind was blown at having stumbled across an Argentine sparkling wine the very moment I first learned they existed. Coincidence? I think not. See, everything does fit together. But first, let's look at Argentina. I've got a little primer, as this is the first time I'm really mentioning the country on this podcast, I believe. So what do we know besides, hey, don't they make some kickin' Malbec? Yes, they do. And on my old Wine to Five podcast, we did interview Laura Catena from Argentina. So we'll go ahead and link that up so you can take a listen. It's the 2nd largest country on the continent of South America. It's the 8th largest country in the world, and it has a population of almost 45 million. The country is a long one, 2,361 miles from north to south. As for the vines, there are about 480,658 acres cultivated in 23,278 vineyards in 51 regions by over 1,200 wineries. So this is a big wine country. Oh, and it's the 5th largest wine producer in the world. But according to a Drinks Business article from last year, only 3% of Argentina's wine production is sparkling, and less than that is exported, I think around 1%. But don't worry, almost $18 billion in Argentine sparkling wine were exported to the U.S. in 2021, almost 48% higher than the previous year. And what's fantastic is the vineyard altitudes climbed to 10,922 feet above sea level, my friends. That here in Colorado is an awesome hike, but that's quite an achievement for a vineyard. Another first for us on the Glass in Session Winecast. Here we find the highest vineyard in the world where an old mine once was in Jujuy in the northern regions at 23 degrees south latitude. The lowest altitude vineyard is in Patagonia at Chubut at 0 feet above sea level and beyond the 45th parallel. And something else I discovered while we're on this little geography kick, the southernmost vineyard in the world, which checks notes and starts catfight with New Zealand and Chile. Yes, New Zealand had some in Central Otago's 45.15 degrees south latitude. Experimental vineyards are below 46 degrees in both Argentina and Chile, including one in Ventesequero, Chile, Chico at 46.54, which has some government experimentation going on. But in the lead, as of this recording, as far as producing wines on the regular, I do believe it is Argentina's Otoño, and I've linked up some articles on this in case you want to try to sort it out. They're growing Chardonnay and Pinot Noir successfully at 45.33 degrees south, and oh hey bonus, sparkling wines. This is incidentally where sparkling wine excels from Pinot Noir. Yet 80% of all Argentina's wines do come from Mendoza in the more central part of the country. Seriously excellent graphics and maps on the Wines of Argentina website to gawk at for hours, but we don't have hours, so let's hit the history. We can trace the wine history of Argentina back to the 1500s. Interestingly enough, it wasn't yawn native foxy grapevines that kicked off the wine industry as in North America. See the Virginia wine episode linked up for you. But no kidding, Vitis vinifera vines brought by Spaniards in 1541. There's also a theory of Peru and Chile-based imports, priests bringing in vines, things like that in the 1550s, thanks to expeditions. But we're going to go with this for now. The first vineyard actually recorded was in 1556 in Santiago del Estero. For the next 3 centuries, Argentina and other South American countries would lean hard on that red mission grape of California fame, here known as Criolla Chica. And just like in Europe for the next 3 centuries, the monks were the workhorses of the wine industry. We remember that from many, many episodes. But by the 1700s, we'd see evidence of wooden barrel use, industrial booms, and innovations in wine production also being brought from the old world. And like other regions we've explored here, a civil war would eventually break out and kill progress, along with some hokey pokey from the Spanish crown, religious silliness, estate seizing, etc. The huge as to why we can't have nice things. Well, Granny, get your spit bucket, because along came General San Martin, considered a national hero in Argentina and other South American countries. He actually helped liberate the Spanish South American people, and I found one source that attributed to this dude the honor of quite possibly being Argentina's first wine connoisseur. But sure, why not? I haven't found another source to back that up, but we do know he enjoyed wine and cigars. Even though he did believe it kind of messed up his head a little bit, he still enjoyed them. So let's go with that. With the advent of glass bottles, Argentina was on the rebound by the 1800s. Another development from this period has to do with some French dude importing some Malbec while the governor of San Juan, Domingo Faustino Sarmiento, was all, yeah, sure, let's build a viticultural research center and a nursery for the vines. Well, why not? And oh, by the way, more European immigrants were rolling in and out of the way of the phylloxera disaster in Europe during the late 1800s. And you know what that means? A love for wine, skills, a taste for wine, and quite possibly some vines. By 1885, they were able to get around by that newfangled railroad thingy. We all know how important transportation is for any business, whether it be ocean waves, the rivers, or highways. So it is with rail. And the sparkling wine age in Argentina was definitely dawning, because corks started popping in 1902 when the first commercial sparkling wines were bottled. This was mirroring Spain's newly trodden cava path, and it pointed in the direction of Argentina's future in sparkling wine production. Meanwhile, in Mendoza, two Germans, Carlos Calles in Guaymallén and Hans van Tol in San Martin. See what I mean? Lots of stuff here named for that brave general. Also, I've attached a bio piece on him in the show notes if you would like to read more about this great independence leader. But Calles and van Tol are credited as the first actual producers of bubbly in Argentina. So that's where we're getting to the meat of this topic this week. They are also vaunted for developing yeast for the bottle fermentation process that they also helped move forward in the country. And ironically, both were noted Pinot Noir vine importers during the mid-1890s. Calles actually went on to spawn brands that are still around to this day, but no sign of whatever happened to Van Tol. And yet, however smoldering the sparkling wine industry was because of these two gentlemen, it was set ablaze by the champagne house of Moet and Chandon in 1960. Just 3 years earlier, Robert-Jean Duvogue and Renaud Poirier wanted to see where else in the world sparkling wines could be, well, sparkly. Their verdict, Mendoza's Luján de Cuyo, was a rockin' place to produce sparkling wine from Chardonnay and Pinot Noir in Argentina. Duvogue and, is it Duvogue or Duvogue? I see an accent there. I'm going to go with Duvogue and Poirier. They were the first chefs de cave of Chandon, Argentina, and they released the first extra brut in 1960. Chandon, Argentina was also Chandon's first house outside of France. However, there was so much social and political strife for the next 2 decades, guerrilla warfare, coups, dictators, human rights abuses, corruption, because of course there was, that we'll have to fast forward, like in many other wine regions, to the 80s. This was the year that Argentina regained its status as a democracy and enacted some economic reforms. Like many other wine regions around the world, we've also talked about, the 1980s ushered in an era of investment, modernization, and of course that was after a brief vine pool scheme and the replanting of new vines in the early 1990s. You're going to see this is a theme across many countries around the world, but also in South America. The new millennium would usher in Bodega Cruzat in 2004, started by cava mogul Pedro Rosell and Mum to San Rafael in 2008. Sparkling wine production peaked in 2014 with 260 million liters being produced, and now there are over 160 houses producing an average of 42.5 million liters a year. Most of today's high-quality sparkling wines do come from Tupungato and Mendoza's Valle de Uco, but keep in mind that many of today's producers do have wineries that date back to the 1800s, like Bodega Norton in 1895. That was bought by the famous Austrian Gernot Lange Swarovski, the crystal dude, in 1989. And now they make sparkling wine. So just because I didn't name them all, I'm pretty sure you don't want that, it doesn't mean they don't have their own piece of the sparkling wine history pie. Now let's talk about styles. because I did mention the extra brut. The styles do range from dry to sweet. They have Blanc de Blancs, which mean white wine from white grapes. They have Rosé, the pink ones. Blanc de Noir, meaning white wines from black grapes. You see that a lot in sparkling wines, but I've seen it in still wines. Even some pet nuts or pétillant naturels. And I did link up a past episode I did on these in case you want a refresher. And all the styles that we can find from Argentinian winemakers. Extra brut seems to be the preferred style or the most available style, which is what Chandon released all those 60 years earlier. Traditional grapes like the aforementioned Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but also Chenin Blanc, Semillon, Viognier, they all find their way into Argentinian bubbles. Let's not forget the flagship grapes of the white Torrontés or Torronteses, because there are 3 different ones, or sparkling Malbec or Bonarda. There are other flagship red grapes. Even Criolla Chica, that old mission grape, it makes its way into bottles of bubbly. And as I said, with over 160 producers creating sparkling wines, and again, not naming them all in alphabetical order, I do remember the first one I did try was, I think, from Piatelli, and it was classic method. Either way, there are a lot of sparklers that do use tank or Charmat method. That doesn't necessarily mean lesser quality. We talked about that in Prosecco episode, but there are other bubbly babbles here on the Winecast that do talk about the different styles. So I will link those up in the show notes. Before we wrap this up, I feel like there's a WTF question out there, mainly about, can you back up the grape truck? And WTF is Bonarda, Val? Is that an Italian thing? Well, it is and it isn't. And let me explain via some grape gabbery and cork dorkery. There is an Italian grape called Bonarda, but it's different. This Bonarda is the French Courbeau, Deuce Noir if you're in its native Savoie. Americans, we call it Charbono because that's just how we roll. Actually, a peek at the wine grapes book tells that the Savoie's neighbor Jura calls it Charbonneau, as in N-E-A-U, not N-O at the end. And perhaps that was what it was imported as, and thus we anglicized it all up as we are wont to do. According to the Wines of Argentina blog, this grape is often confused with other red varieties, at least until 2009, thank you DNA profiling. And as of 2021, it was still the second most planted red grape, 15.59% of red grapes, actually in Argentina behind Malbec. It is planted on over 18,300 hectares compared to Malbec's 45,657 hectares, or just over 39% of the reds. Most of the Bonarda grows in the warmer areas, over 80% in Mendoza, but there is that 9% hanging out in the cooler regions. For a deeper dive, I've linked up Amanda Barnes' article called The Essential Bonarda Wine Guide on the South American Wine Guide website, which I believe I've raved about before, and now I have her book, which is also quite awesome. I do wish I had some cooler trivia for you this week besides highest vineyards in the world and a cat fight for the southernmost vineyards in the world, but alas, I do not. So I'm going to tap out here with one last sip, and I'm going to thank you for listening and for making room for me in your podcast feed. I know you have so many options and one can only listen to so many booze podcasts. Trust me, I know. So I am honored that you've chosen mine. You can always reach out to me via email at val@glassandsession.com or on the socials. Hey guys, I'm on Threads, Vino with Val, same as Instagram. I like it there a lot. It's nice. Glass and Session is also on post.news at Glass and Session. I'm now on Spottable, Glass and Session, Mastodon, Glass and Session at epicure.social. On the Pinterest, I'm Vino with Val, and on the Facebook, it's Facebook/Glass and Session. I still have the Wine Gal Unboxed Twitter account. I'm just kind of there from Giant Military Cats, F and Bird, and just to repost links for all my other social media accounts in case you forget them. If you dig smartass cat content, you know my podcast, Smoker Doodles. In fact, it's his lunchtime, so I got to get going here. It's at Nebelung_smoke_show. Nebelung Smoke Show. He is a smoke show. He's on the Instagram where I do check in more often because there's nothing cuter and happier than cat content. There is Glass in Session and yes, podcast swag in my TeePublic store, linked way at the bottom of the show notes and on my website. And since I don't do sponsors, I don't do ads, I don't do Patreon, this is one small way to support the Winecast, keep Smokey well stocked in treats as he sits here on my lap while I create this booze entertainment just for you. Glass in Session is a production and registered trademark of Vino with Val, LLC. Music is Write Your Story by Joystock. Website is glassandsession.com.